Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're putting on our applied economist hats to decode the hidden math that governs market behaviors, pricing strategies, and even your own consumer choices. If you've ever wondered how the completely invisible forces of the market actually get measured by the pros, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to skip the usual roadmap today because I want to jump right into a massive, real-world puzzle that economists face literally every single day. How on earth do you quantify the unquantifiable? I mean, how do you put a hard, exact price on an extra hour of time? Or predict precisely how a simple $1 price hike is going to ripple through complex human behavior? Section 1. The reality of constraints. Okay, let's dive into this by establishing the fundamental baseline reality for any applied economist. We live in a world governed entirely by scarcity and limits. Before we can optimize anything, we really have to understand the invisible walls surrounding our choices. In economics, agents routinely face boundaries they can touch, but absolutely cannot cross. Whether it's a household budget limit that isn't fully exhausted, a non-negativity restriction that forces a choice variable down to zero, or just a physical limit on raw materials, every single decision happens inside a constrained box. Now, classical theory used to require all constraints to hold perfectly equal. But let's be real, the actual world doesn't work like that. So we use a math framework, specifically the Kuhn-Tucker conditions, which gives us this really cool insider concept called complementary slackness. This helps us figure out exactly which boundaries are actually binding us and which ones are just slack and totally irrelevant. You see these boundaries everywhere out in the wild. Take Tesla, for instance. They're fighting tooth and nail to keep their electric vehicle dominance, trying to maximize profits, but they're completely boxed in by specific market share and marketing expense constraints. Or think about utility companies using peak load pricing. They charge you more during peak hours precisely because the physical capacity of their power grid is completely maxed out. Even governments face these massive boundaries when they're evaluating big public projects under a strict, fixed $250 million budget. Section 2. Discovering the shadow price. To navigate these rigid limits, we need our very first mathematical tool. It's derived from what we call Lagrange multipliers, but in applied economics, we know it by a much cooler name: the shadow price. So what is it? A shadow price is the maximum price management is willing to pay for an extra unit of a given limited resource. It's the marginal value of relaxing a constraint by exactly 1 unit. The absolute crucial point here is that a shadow price puts an exact monetary value on relaxing your most frustrating bottleneck. It basically tells you what a scarce resource is actually worth to you at the margin. Let's translate that dense math into an everyday business decision. Picture a busy factory floor. If a manager's production line is totally maxed out at its 40-hour limit, they need to know if paying for overtime is actually worth the cost. Well, the shadow price tells them the exact maximum amount they should be willing to pay to unlock hour 41, based strictly on the extra benefit they'd get from that single incremental change. But hey, it's not just about factory floors and profit margins. Analysts also use shadow prices to measure completely invisible societal impacts. Take vaccinations. The private marginal cost is simply what it costs a manufacturer to produce the physical vial, but the social marginal cost, that's much lower. Why? Because we subtract the positive shadow price of public health, which is the invisible but deeply profound societal benefit of stopping an infectious disease from spreading. The shadow price magically corrects the market's failure to price in that incredible societal benefit. Section 3. The price impact puzzle. Let's shift gears over to the consumer side and look at our next great measurement dilemma. How on earth do we predict price impacts when human satisfaction, or what we call utility, is completely invisible? You can't just attach a meter to someone's brain and measure their happiness in utils. To solve this, applied economists use a ridiculously neat trick. We just flip the problem upside down. Instead of agonizing over the primal problem, which asks a consumer to maximize their invisible utility subject to a fixed budget, we switch to the dual problem. The dual problem asks the consumer to minimize their easily observable expenditures subject to hitting a fixed target level of utility. You see, it's two sides of the exact same coin, but one is just way, way easier to actually measure. Now, to really understand how people react when prices go up, we have to contrast two different types of demand. First, there's Marshallian demand. This tracks what happens when you have a fixed budget and a price changes. This mixes together both the substitution effect and the reality that you suddenly just feel poorer. But then we have Hicksian, or compensated demand. This holds your satisfaction completely constant, like keeping your happiness perfectly balanced on a scale while prices fluctuate. It isolates purely how you substitute one good for another when prices shift, mathematically compensating you for the lost purchasing power. Section 4, Shepard's Lemma Explained. And this brings us to the ultimate applied economist cheat code for navigating those changing prices, measuring Hicksian demand, and finally, solving this puzzle. Okay, Shepard's lemma. By definition, it's a mathematical property stating that the partial derivatives of the expenditure function with respect to prices are exactly equal to the Hicksian demand functions. Yeah, I know that definition sounds incredibly intimidating, but it actually provides a beautifully elegant mathematical shortcut. An expenditure function is simply the minimum cost required to reach a certain level of happiness at given prices. Shepard's lemma proves mathematically that if you take the derivative of that expenditure function with respect to a specific price, you get the exact Hicksian demand for that good. Boom! Take a look at this curve here, representing the expenditure function, and just focus your eyes on that single dot. By simply finding the slope of the curve right at that exact dot, which is all the derivative really is, we instantly get the exact demand for the good. We literally never have to measure the consumer's invisible utility. We just watch how their minimum required spending naturally reacts to a price shift. If we translate that into plain English, the rule is basically this. The rate at which your costs change when a price goes up is exactly equal to the amount of the good you are currently buying. Think about it. If the price of your daily coffee goes up by $1 and you currently buy 2 coffees, your overall expenditure needs to go up by $2 just to keep you equally happy. You don't need to read minds. You just need to watch how much a price change impacts an overall budget. Section 5. Measuring real-world impacts. So how do analysts actually take these abstract theoretical curves and use them to make massive, real-world decisions? As applied economists, we rely on a super simple 3-step framework to activate this Shepard's lemma cheat code. Step 1, identify the firm or consumer's expenditure function, which we can easily estimate using real-world accounting or purchasing data. Step 2, take the derivative with respect to the specific price you want to analyze. Step 3, cleanly bypass that whole messy problem of unobservable utility to reveal the precise demand curve. This is exactly how we measure real-world price impacts, map out conditional factor demands in manufacturing, or predict consumer responses in retail. And let me tell you, these tools dictate decisions on a massive, massive scale. Think about a local government running a cost-benefit analysis for a brand new public freeway. Let's say the freeway costs $250 million, but it saves 500,000 commuter hours a year. By calculating the shadow price of time, economists can convert those 500,000 abstract hours into a hard dollar amount to see if the project is actually worth the taxpayer money. Or look at the private sector. Tesla using Lagrange multipliers to perfectly balance market share constraints against marketing expenses. Or major multinational corporations utilizing shadow prices to evaluate the true environmental, social, and governance footprint of their investments, literally assigning a financial cost to carbon emissions that the free market hasn't even priced yet. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with this thought. Whether we're using Shepard's lemma to flawlessly predict demand or shadow prices to calculate the exact value of an hour of time, economics is ultimately all about trade-offs. Optimization isn't just about money. It's about uncovering the hidden value of the limits we face every single day. So, if every constraint in our lives has a shadow price, what is the invisible cost of your daily limits? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Applied Economist Toolkit. Keep questioning the invisible forces around you, and I'll see you next time.